What happens if I don't press got it?
Good question.
Well, again, we got it.
Ah,
It's the live stream. This is what takes a minute.
careful of what you say, everyone.
Right. The rest of the people. David and Mary both said they would make it. Kelly was unsure. And we're obviously waiting for Mike and Brian.
I guess we only need one more person for a quorum, so.
It's just joining.
And there she is. Good evening, Mary.
Oh, and here's David.
And there's Brian.
Hey, everyone.
Ah, look at this. And David as well. Good evening, David.
And Mike is joining right now too. Our transcriber will probably do the transcribing via the recording. So
Okay.
we're ready to go whenever you are.
Recording is on. The live feed is on. So I'll call the meeting to order. And the roll call includes Mary, David Westmoreland, Lisa Cooper, and myself. Staff, we have Brian, Katie, and Eugenia somewhere. Any public participation? Anyone else out there wanting to join and say something?
Yeah, John, Mike was joining. I'm not sure what happened. So maybe his connection got lost. Eugenia, I don't know if he would email you. Oh, here we go. Here's trying
Is he
again.
back?
Good evening, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I've been having some spotty internet issues. I apologize. Hopefully I will last for the duration.
Okay. Well, we called the meeting to order. We did the roll call. There's no one from the public wanting to make any comments, so we'll go into item 4 of the agenda, the administration. First item is to approve the minutes of the November 14th, 2023 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to move that? Lisa, second by David. Anybody want to make changes? Anyone's last name misspelled? No, nothing?
And John, I apologize. Did we just call Norwalk to order first?
Yes, we did. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
good. Sorry, I wanted to confirm.
I have to be here 2 minutes early next time. So we'll call the meeting, Norwalk meeting to order. And no one has any changes, so all in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. It's unanimous. David voted, he didn't know it. Then we'll go to item B, financials. Approve the Norwalk Housing Corporation audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, to be presented by our auditor, Michael Slacken. Michael, you're on stage here.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank you, all of you, for giving us the opportunity again. I'll present the Norwalk report here. I know we'll be doing the redevelopment agency after this too, but it's always been a pleasure. I do want to upfront thank both Brian and Eugenia for all their cooperation and other staff that we worked with. It's always been a pleasure, and it's obviously, we're sitting here in December since the report is due, not so much Norwalk in a way, but the redevelopment agency's report is due December 31st. So we're in good shape to get that done in time, and get a copy sent to the state. My remarks are going to be kind of brief, especially with Norwalk. It's again our clean opinion, our audit report. There were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which is the language we use for anything bad that might have been happening or we had to report to you. I think the major change, if you look at the financial statements themselves, the statement of financial position, the statement of activities. Statement of activities was pretty similar to last year from the standpoint of the revenue less the expenses. The change was about the same. The major change in the statement of financial position, which is basically your balance sheet, was the major receivables in the prior year were collected, and that plus some additional cash was put into more money market investments. So you'll see your money market balance went from roughly 155,000 last year to 660,000. That is the main change in the financial position of Norwalk. The disclosures, the footnotes, which start on page 4 and go through page 6, are virtually the same as last year. There have been no major disclosure changes. The major change last year, and we'll talk about it again in a few minutes with the lease standard, did not apply to Norwalk. So there really is nothing in the last couple of years of any significance that would require us to kind of discuss that in the footnotes. So I think everybody knows this is a separate 501c3 organization, unlike NRA, which is a governmental entity. So there is a Form 990 that gets prepared for Norwalk, which is a public document. And when that gets e-filed, any interested party can go to GuideStar or any of those services and see the 990 for Norwalk. So again, that's a public document. There's been virtually no changes to Form 990. As I tell all boards, and probably have been saying this for the last few years, Congress has their hands full with many other things, and I don't think 990 is anywhere on the list to make any kind of changes. So it's typically an information return. I think you all know that it's really not a tax return per se. It's a place to kind of just report the information for the organization. That is pretty much it for me, for Norwalk.
Any questions for Mike? No, no questions. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
The item 4B was moved. Do I have a vote? All in favor of approving the financials? Approve unanimously. So now we'll go on to redevelopment agency. Switching hats here. We're now Norwalk Redevelopment. I'm calling to order. Roll call. We have Lisa, Mary, David Westmoreland, myself, and staff. We have Brian, Katie O'Leary, and Eugenia. Anyone in the public wanting to make a comment? No public comments. We'll move on to 4, approval of the minutes. We'll approve the minutes of the November 14th, 2023 regular meeting. Do you have a motion to approve those minutes? David and Lisa seconded. Any changes? No, everyone's name is spelled correctly again. Good. Seeing no changes or comments, all in favor of item A1? It's approved unanimously. Then we'll go on to item 4B, financials. Approved Norwalk Redevelopment Agency audited financial statements for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023, as presented by our auditor, Michael. You're on stage.
Again, thank you all, and I will have a few more comments here, but it's pretty much good news from the auditor's perspective here. Again, No significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which would have been in the report, and you folks would have been hearing from me well in advance of this meeting, obviously. Just as a reminder to kind of contrast and compare to my report on Norwalk. So the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency is by statute a governmental entity. And so governmental accounting standards apply here, as opposed to in the Norwalk situation, which would be generally accepted accounting principles, although they do apply here too, but there's another layer, obviously, as you know, the government accounting standards. Also, in the redevelopment agency, since you expend, not so much, you do receive more than $1 million too, but it's based on expenditures. Since the organization expends more than $1 million of federal grant money, you undergo what's called a federal single audit also. So not only do we do an audit in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, but for the CDBG grant and for any other federal grants, we have to do extra work, okay? And and we'll get to some of those reports in a second, but the main one I want to point out, and I'm sure I've said this in the past, probably the most important page in this document for you folks as board members would be the last one, which is page 26, which is where we would have to report any findings or question costs for that federal grant, or any federal grant for that matter. So, you know, it's a pretty powerful page. The last two sentences basically say there were no findings or question costs, but I think you can understand that, you know, we have to test a lot of transactions for the most part. It's probably in the neighborhood of around 30 to 40 transactions that we're testing, and that's almost the bulk of the activity in that grant. And we have to test it for federal regulations and rules in addition to the audit standards that we have to adhere to. So it's saying a lot there, even though you see a couple of sentences and you say, all right, kind of take that for granted. But so that's a very important page that I always like to point out up front. And again, even though, and I think Eugenia can attest to this, and Brian, even though we're still in a very much a paperless environment these days, it still is a paper chase. And I'll put that in quotes to make sure all the documentation is there. So we don't ever take that for granted as auditors. And I think it's just a testament to the organization as far as the results are concerned. As far as the financial statements again are concerned, which start on page 6, and again, I'll preface it by saying pages 1 through 5, which is your management's discussion and analysis, does come from you folks. So we don't really prepare this, and that's pretty much in our standards. The auditor really shouldn't be preparing this. We do review it, but it's management's discussion analysis. So this has come primarily from Brian and from Eugenia, and they give us the text to use, and then we combine it for purposes of presenting it to you folks. But on page 6 starts the actual financial statements themselves. And, you know, when I take a step back here and I look at last year and I look at this year to try to get, you know, a sense of what happened really from 22 to 23, if we can just kind of sum it up. I say again, it's the assets and the liabilities in your statement of net position were fairly consistent. There was approximately another $300,000, I think, that went into money market funds. So I think that was really the major change. You had some cash. We had some funds from, again, collecting receivables that went to more of your investment in the money market accounts. As far as the revenue is concerned, the revenue and expenses on the statement of activities, the revenue was pretty much right on to 22, and I think there was about $300,000 to $400,000 of additional project expenditures We're kind of summarizing the information here. I probably, if I went back, and I don't know if Brian or Eugenia want to comment what that in particular might be. It looks like was probably more in the operating side than on the federal grant side, so. No, anything, I don't think there was anything really that jumped out of this that was, I think it's just an accumulation of some project expenditures, so. But that resulted in a change in that position that was a negative amount this year. But again, when we get your budgeted numbers, and it's, I think on page 21 is where you're comparing your actual expenditures to the budgeted amounts. All those amounts were within the original and the final budget that was presented. So I don't think anything here is a surprise or anything that wasn't expected from the standpoint of your budgeted amounts versus your actual. The disclosures again are pretty consistent. I know I went over this last year because it was new, and Eugenia kind of, was able to take the ball and run with it. We gave her copies of the actual standard, and this deals with the lease, the new lease standard. Our lingo, we call it ASC 842. Well, and again, that's on the for-profit side. I have to amend what I just said. It's GASB 87 here. I'm in two different worlds sometimes with the governmental entities. It's GASB 87, which was a new lease standard last year, where you had to capitalize your operating leases. So we have two operating leases, and that is it's in footnote number, get to it here. Footnote number 6 on page 16 of the footnotes. This was new last year. Washington Street, I don't believe was reported last year because it didn't really take effect till after June 30th, 22. So that's new, but to kind of, again, summarize this so I don't spin your head with unnecessary accounting standards, but the standard setters decided a few years ago, and it took a couple of delays before this took place, that to show an operating expense of lease or rent expense was not really the reality of a commitment that had been made in a formal lease. So they said, you need to take the present value of all the lease payments that are going to be made, in your case, say over a 4 or 5 year period, and that should be an asset on your books and a liability, because the asset is you have a right to use that office space or building space for that number of years, and then you also have a liability in that you owe the landlord X amount of dollars over that time period. I will tell you that this is not, I think, created any concerns in any organization. It happens to be on the balance sheet. It doesn't really change the statement of activities all that much, because instead of rent expense, it's just interest and depreciation. And to be honest with you, it hasn't really, I don't think it's meant a lot. And anybody looking at an organization and trying to see if this means anything that's significant. So again, it's a new standard. We all had to kind of deal with it. And the disclosure is there. Otherwise, the footnotes are pretty much the same as the prior year. And again, it talks about the federal and state grants and commitments and contingencies and the like. There's nothing, the last page of the footnotes, which is on page 18, kind of summarizes anything that's going to be new out there. I think in the past, if you had last year's statements and the one even before that, this went on for a few pages. So it's been kind of quiet in the governmental accounting world. And I don't even think these 3 new standards that will be effective are going to really affect you guys. So, so there's really nothing I see out there that you really need to worry about. Page 19 through the end of the document are the required reports that we have to include that deal with the federal grants. And just again, to kind of summarize all those letters, I gave you right up front what the more important page was, which was page 26. Those other reports really would only be significant if we had here a situation where you had significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And again, we would have been discussing that prior to this meeting, but that's where we would have had to talk about those things in those reports. And we would have to enumerate them and discuss them, and you would have had to have an action plan on how to deal with them. So it's all good news, nothing we have to report on. And I would say the only other thing I would want to talk to the board about, and I'll leave it to the chair and to the board's judgment. Typically, we would have a dialogue that would not include staff at the conclusion of my presentation. So just to kind of have that discussion we would need to have. Shouldn't take long.
Can we achieve that easily, or?
I could log out. I think me, Katie, and Katie, are you host? That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I'm host. I mean, I can pass off that if anyone else is comfortable with managing the meeting.
Yeah, John, you can make John host, I think, and then we could still log back in. It should maintain the same link.
Right, John, and then what would happen is if you click on participants at the bottom, if you click on that right now, can you see anything? Do you see a list of the participants?
Yep, I do.
Right.
I see it on the right-hand side.
Those of us who would come back, when we come back, we would show up at the top. You'd have to, if you highlight our name, hit admit to let us back in.
All right.
And John, do you want to just text us when you're ready, or you want to text me and I could text Katie and Eugenia?
Sure.
Okay, we'll plan that.
There you go. So if you want to vote to go into executive session, then I will turn off the recording when you're done and I will step out.
Okay. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved, seconded by David Westmoreland. I'm sorry. The motion was made by David Westmoreland and seconded by Mary Peniston. All in favor? 4 of us say yes. Okay, we're now in executive session.
Okay, I'm going to make John the host. And then I'm going to,
Okay, and Brian's in the waiting room.
actually, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I'm going to reclaim the coast and I'm going to stop the recording.
The executive session of the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency meeting, we've come out of that. No decisions were made, nothing voted on at that time during that meeting. So we're back into regular session. And I believe it's up to us. We've had a motion to approve the audited statements, and I think it's just the vote at this point. All in favor? Okay, well, it's approved by the 4 of us. So then we'll be moving on to item 2, the approve the Norwalk Redevelopment Agency Statement of Revenues and Expenditures for Operating Fund 100 through year-to-date October 31st. Michael, I don't know if you want to sit through this or you want to say Happy New Year.
Well, I want to say, yes, I will echo that again for the board and now for staff. Thank you all for your help. Have a great holiday season. With all due respect, if I can jump off, that would be great since I get ready for my next one. But thank you all.
Thank you,
all
Mike.
again.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Okay, Eugenia,
Yes.
you're set to stage.
Okay. For the period year-to-date October, the operating Fund 100 had revenues of $550,000 versus a budget of $503,000 for a favorable variance of $47,000. Total operating expenses were $573,000 versus a budget of $629,000, which resulted in a favorable variance of $56,000, which is mostly due to favorable personnel expenditures. The actual operating deficit of $22,000 versus a budgeted deficit of $125,000 resulted in a favorable variance of $103,000.
That's it?
Yes,
All right. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Those statements? David's made the motion. Anyone have questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Four of us again. Thank you, Eugenia.
you're welcome.
And I won't see you this week. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Yes.
Okay, then we'll go to item number 5, business. Item A, Community Investment Fund application, MLK corridor improvements. We're going to, item 1 is authorize the executive director to apply for and execute any documents related to the grant as reflected in the attached resolution. Brian, want to give us a little summary of that resolution?
Yeah, no problem. So this is derived from the DCD's Community Investment Fund. We've been working to pull together an application in support of some of our work around in South Norwalk. Specifically, the grant is for $6 million from DCD. They're requesting a resolution of the board in advance of applying. The grant is due this Friday. The project itself is going to be divided into 3 tasks. You have $1.5 million going to streetscapes and various infrastructure improvements in support of the new South Norwalk School. $500,000 to recapitalize our facade improvement program, similar to what you've seen us, doing the single family homes, as well as the work at Columbus Court. We're trying to expand the commercial component of that, for multifamily or affordable housing improvements. And then the larger piece for $4 million is to provide additional funds for our infrastructure work around the South Norwalk train station. So as those designs have advanced, have been further scoped, we've identified about a $4 million delta in the funding. So we've been working with the city and state leadership to pursue funds to accommodate that gap. And this is the source that we're going to be pursuing. So you'd be authorizing us to apply for and execute the grant agreements if we are awarded.
Okay. Question from Mary?
Brian, that's wonderful, but could I just ask a favor, which is if when you do these, if you could even just do a half-page summary of what it's for, because I can't always hold all the numbers in my head when you're presenting them. So I think it's wonderful you're doing it, but it would be great if we just had, like I said, even just a half-page descriptor of what the intent of it is.
No problem. We'll put a memo together on the next one. This was kind of last minute that they requested this, but we'll definitely.
And you sound like you're recovering or you're in the middle of a cold.
I'm in the middle of it. Sorry. Yeah. I'm very much in the middle of it.
Join the club. Okay, so it's been moved, so I'll call for a vote. If there aren't any more questions, anyone else have questions? No? Call for a vote. All in favor of giving Brian that responsibility? It's 4 of us again. We move on to item B. I guess it's a change order request for Webster Street lot financial analysis. I authorize the executive director to execute any and all agreements for change order for Webster Street lot financial analysis. Brian.
Thank you. So as you'll recall, we engaged a third-party financial analysis firm, advisory firm for the Webster Street lot project. As we've sort of gone through the public outreach for the Webster Street lot project, based on the community feedback and the needs and wants of adjacent property owners and sort of the dance that occurs, in regards to negotiations, we've identified that Corterra was not going to be able to actually accommodate some of the specific needs, such as maintaining the grocery store, and also just more strategic direction, working with adjacent property owners. So we've mutually agreed that we're going to move on to continue negotiations with the other pre-qualified candidate, which is Spinnaker. As if you'll recall, they represent a consortium of the adjacent property owners, which is going to help provide additional flexibility in terms of site design and trying to make it a sort of block level plan. And that's assuming we can reach terms on a deal. So there obviously isn't a deal quite yet. There's a proposal that's been put forward. And what you're looking at tonight is what would allow the third-party firm to dive deeper into their proposal. So it would require a little extra work. They'd be, looking at the assumptions in their model, making sure it's financially accurate, identifying any risks, carrying forward what we learned from the last engagement into this for the negotiations, and then generating a report, kind of expanding upon the economic impact analysis of the proposed deal, and just basically providing us negotiation and technical services as we negotiate with Spinnaker.
The estimated, this contract is for how much?
67,000
Okay.
is the estimated value, and it should occur in a couple months.
Okay. Any other questions? Not seeing any.
I'm sorry, could I just ask for a clarification? So this was the developer that you're working with and it's not going to work out with them? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, basically we've come to terms that we should be moving on to the next qualified candidate.
Okay. I'm sorry for you. I know that's a lot of work.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, I think this is natural parts of these kind of large scale deals.
Yep. And so I imagine that this will slow down the process of the development, correct?
Not so much, just because we've kind of been working part and parcel for the last few months, so it's somewhat of a seamless integration. And the project manager from Quartera is now working at Spinnaker.
Okay. Could I just ask, is it appropriate anywhere in here that I think several of us have expressed interest that, and you have been, I think, very cognizant and made efforts to make sure that the issue of the affordable housing and units with 3 bedrooms, et cetera, in there. I didn't see any of that specified. I don't know if it's appropriate, but can that issue be explicitly raised as you're looking at the financial feasibility of the project as you're talking to Spinnaker?
Yeah, we could definitely, I'll fold it into the discussions. I could say the current proposal is mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms, but it still is pushing to maintain that 20% affordability requirement that we have as part of the grant, the SIF grant, the other SIF grant that we got.
Okay. No other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of giving Brian this authority? 4 of us again. Unanimous. And next we have new business, old business. Do we have any? Anything you want to put on the list to discuss? Nope. Mary, David, Lisa? Nope. Okay. Someone like to make a motion to adjourn, seeing no further business? No, David, Lisa, seconded. All in favor? The staff can vote on this one too. Good night, everyone. If I don't see
Take care,
you,
everyone.
happy holidays, happy new year. And I'm sure I'll see some of you before the end of the year.
Very good. Take care, everyone.
Thank
you.
you.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays, everyone.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.